I made my first video in February. I was just so excited to kind of get going and get started with doing the bucket list, but we've actually had a really slow start to summer here in Salt Lake. Usually it goes right from ski season and snow into summer, but this spring has been cold and wet and rainy, and it's May 15th right now, and we're getting rain and snow up in the mountains. So I mentioned in my first video, and if you missed it, this whole series is about me trying to complete as many bucket list items as I can in the year, and it's a bit of a challenge for me. Part of the challenge is actually getting better at videography, and as you can tell, I already got a new mic because I realized my last one was crap. In my first video, I mentioned that I kind of teased that the Grand Canyon was going to be my first bucket list trip, and the Rim to Rim Trail has been on my bucket list forever. But I actually managed to snag some permits for yet another bucket list hike in Bryce Canyon National Park called Under the Rim Trail. And sometimes permits are really tough to get, but I think because the spring has been so cold and rainy that a couple spots opened up and I managed to snag them. Also, I wanted to get another hike in before the Grand Canyon hike because I didn't want the Grand Canyon hike to be the first hike of the year. Sorry for lying, but we'll start the adventure here in Bryce Canyon. Ebenezer Bryce was one of the first European settlers to call this place home, but he didn't stay long. And when they asked him why he left, he said, and I quote, "It's a hell of a place to lose a cow." And you can understand that with all these mazes of hoodoos. One of the reasons I was so excited to go on this hike is that I found this old 1970s Sierra Club Guides National Parks in a thrift store. And I just love going back and reading what they're writing about in the 80s and 70s. And even they have some quotes back here all the way from, the 1800s. There's this great quote about one of the first reports of Bryce that reached the general public, and it was in 1915, which wasn't even that long ago. I mean, that was just over 100 years ago. The quote comes from a forest supervisor, J.W. Humphrey. He didn't believe some of the tales that were emerging from the area in Bryce and needed to be convinced, so he wanted to go see the canyon. And he said, "You can imagine my surprise at the indescribable beauty that greeted us, and it was sundown before I could be dragged from the canyon view." And I have to agree with J.W. Humphrey. Even after being in the area of Bryce and living in Utah, you kind of get used to seeing the big red rock cliffs and canyons. And that's one of the reasons I never went to go visit. But when I finally did, Bryce just hits different. It's this amazing combination of high alpine. I mean, you're like 6,000 feet up. You have these beautiful big pine trees. And then you look down into these amphitheaters, these little theaters of just hoodoos, and they look like little people sitting in these stadiums, and it's like pretty amazing area, even for someone who lives in this and recreates pretty often out in desert areas. It was a beautiful surprise, and almost like JW, I had to almost be peeled away at every view because I was just sitting with my camera snapping so many pictures. So we did finally make it to camp after about 11 miles of hiking. Swamp Canyon campsite, the one we had a permit for, is almost right in the middle of the trail, which makes it a perfect place to stop for the night. Bryce has some of the darkest skies in the country, and I was excited to get camp set up, have dinner, and then try to get some shots of the Milky Way. But it was super windy out and it was cloudy, so after just a quick dinner, we all jumped in our tents for the night. This is, fun fact, this is Andy's first time setting up. He wants to correct me so much. It's not. He hiked the 18. I think he set it up once or twice during that. It was windy, very windy last night, and it kept blowing a ton of sand in here. Maybe we can show you. This is all sand in here. Andy's not impressed. We just left our camp at Swamp Canyon. We're heading back out to finish the hike. We have about 10 miles to go today. And it is cold today, so it's almost May. And I would say temperatures are 45, maybe lower. So everyone's pretty chilly, but that's good. Be bold, start cold, and we're gonna warm up as we hike. There were a few challenges to this hike, to this trail. Most importantly, there really isn't a lot of water. And we only came across 2 streams at the very beginning and the very end of the hike, which it's not helpful, meaning we had to conserve water during the hardest parts of the hike. Also, the second stream we came across was flowing, but it was really muddy. We still filtered a little bit of water out of it, but it probably wasn't great for our filters to do that, and we had enough to finish, so it wasn't a huge deal. We went in at the end of April, and there was still like little patches of snow, which means there's some water in the park, but I know probably in May and onwards there's no water at all on this trail, so you really have to be careful with the water you do have. You can see there's significant elevation change, over 5,000 feet on this trail, and there wasn't any part of the trail that was flat. You really start hitting these waves and these bumps. The trail isn't particularly hard, but because of the water and because of the constant up and down, we wouldn't say the trail was easy either. It was kind of the perfect challenge. We've come across an obstacle.
1, 2, 3. Oh! Woo!
We were just way down in the valley and came all the way up this hill. I just have to read this other report that is out of this book. The upper tier of the vast amphitheater is one mighty ruined colonnade, standing obelisks, prostrate columns, shattered capitals, all bringing vividly before the mind suggestions of the work of giant hands. A race of genii now chained up in a spell of enchantment while their structures are falling in ruins through centuries of decay. I love discovering old writings about our parks. They remind us that conservation actually works. The landscapes they described centuries ago still exist today because those who fought to protect them. 150 years later, we're experiencing the same emotions and seeing the same sights as C.E. Dutton did before us. Imagine if the rest of the world looked the way our parks did, right? Like, our parks aren't just scenic escapes. They actually are some of the last true bastions of wilderness. They're living time capsules of the past. And just another reason why we have to do what C.E. Dutton did and protect these lands so 150 years from now, our great-great-great-grandchildren can still have the same views that they did back then. Oh yeah. Pavement, first step on pavement. All right, now we can go ahead and get the bucket list out and we can officially mark off the Under the Rim Trail. I don't know if you can see that, but there it is, and this part is always very satisfying. So here we go. Whew. I only have like 800 more things to do. That's awesome. That does always that feels good. And actually, that's not the only bucket list item I managed to mark off in this rainy and cold Utah spring. I actually did one other one. So we'll have a video on that one soon. And then next week, I'm headed to the Grand Canyon and going to do Rim to Rim Trail. So Under the Rim Trail, now next is Rim to Rim Trail, and I am so excited. And there's my cat, hey buddy. And perfect timing, Whiskey just woke up from his nap. And he might, oh, I'm sorry, buddy. He might be coming on some bucket list items with us too. So until next time.